Detroit winter morning bit through the cracked windows of Jerry's Auto Service, a family business that had been serving the Corktown neighborhood for 3 generations. Amidst the smell of motor oil and the pneumatic hiss of air tools, worked Patricia Louise, a 36-year-old mechanic whose hands moved with the precision of a surgeon. There was no transmission that could stump her, no engine problem she couldn't diagnose just by listening to a vehicle's idle. "Miss Patricia, it's my Honda again," said Mrs. Chen, a restaurant owner who arrived every 6 weeks with her '05 Accord. "You're the only one who knows how to keep her running." Patricia smiled as she wiped her hands with a red shop rag, pulling her dark hair back into a tighter ponytail. She was a woman of lean, muscular build with grease permanently embedded under her short nails and laugh lines around her eyes that betrayed years of patient customer service in an industry that had never welcomed her. She wore the shop's navy coveralls with quiet dignity, as if they were armor against a world that constantly questioned her right to be there. "Leave it here, Mrs. Chen. She'll purr like new by this afternoon," she replied, with her characteristic steady voice. Billy Jerry, the shop owner, watched the scene from his cluttered office with a mixture of resentment and barely concealed anger. He was a 45-year-old man, stocky and red-faced, always with tension visible in his jaw. His grandfather had founded the business, and his father had grown it before passing it to Billy 10 years ago. But neither of them had ever imagined a woman would become its most valuable asset. The thought gnawed at him constantly, a splinter under the skin he couldn't remove. The shop had 3 other mechanics. Danny Rodriguez, a 28-year-old with 6 years of solid experience and a genuine respect for Patricia's skill. Marcus Thompson, a 40-year-old with 15 years under his belt and a chip on his shoulder about being overshadowed by the girl. And Frank Morrison, the 62-year-old veteran who'd been there since Billy's father ran the place. A man who'd slowly learned that talent didn't care about gender. "Boss, we're out of transmission fluid again," said Danny, entering the office with an inventory sheet. "Patricia went through 3 cases this week alone. She's got 4 major jobs lined up for next week too, all customers who asked for her specifically." Billy's face darkened as he stared at his computer screen. The numbers told a story he'd been trying to ignore for months. 75% of the shop's revenue came from customers who specifically requested Patricia Louise. The waiting list for her services stretched 2 weeks out, while the other bays sat empty more often than not. "Why does everyone want her?" Billy muttered, loud enough for Danny to hear. Danny shifted uncomfortably. "Because she's the best, boss. She's been here 15 years. She knows every car that comes through that door, and customers trust her. That's worth something." But to Billy, it was worth too much. It meant that in his own shop, bearing his family's name, a woman had become more valuable than him, than his authority, than every man who'd ever worked there. The thought was unbearable, festering like an infection he couldn't cure. That afternoon, Patricia finished 7 repairs, one after another. Customers arrived asking specifically for her. Mr. Washington with his restored '67 Mustang that he trusted no one else to touch. The Rodriguez family with their minivan that made a grinding noise when turning. The Hassan family with their Camry that lost power going uphill. "Patricia, you're a machine," joked Danny while watching his colleague diagnose a cylinder misfire just by listening to the engine for 30 seconds. "It's about paying attention, Danny. Cars tell you everything if you listen," Patricia replied, sliding under a chassis with her work light, her movements efficient and confident from 15 years of proving herself every single day. At 6 in the evening, when the shop officially closed, Patricia stayed an extra 20 minutes organizing her tools and preparing for the next day's workload. She was meticulous to the smallest detail, a habit born from knowing that one mistake, one oversight would be magnified 100 times over, simply because she was a woman in a man's world. She lived alone in a modest apartment 8 blocks from the shop. She'd been married once, briefly, to a man who couldn't handle having a wife who made more money than him and worked with her hands. She dedicated her entire adult life to her craft, fighting for every inch of respect she'd earned. That night, Billy stayed late reviewing the financial records. The numbers didn't lie. 3/4 of the income came from Patricia's loyal customer base. An idea began to form in his mind. A dangerous idea, fueled by jealousy, insecurity, and prejudices he'd inherited from 3 generations of men who'd never imagined this scenario. If Patricia weren't here, the customers would have to settle for the others, he thought aloud, the words tasting bitter but somehow satisfying. The business would be more balanced. Back to the way it should be. The next morning, a Tuesday, Patricia arrived punctually at 7 a.m. as she had for 15 years. She noticed immediately that Billy was waiting at the office door with an expression that promised nothing good. The other mechanics were already in their bays, but the atmosphere felt charged, wrong somehow. Danny glanced at her with worried eyes. Marcus wore a slight smirk. Old Frank looked down at his tools, unable to meet her gaze. "Patricia, I need to speak with you," Billy said without preamble. The Tuesday morning air felt different somehow, heavy with something Patricia couldn't name. Billy's office door stood open, and he gestured sharply for her to enter before she'd even clocked in. The cramped space smelled of old coffee and frustration. Behind the desk, surrounded by invoices and family photos that didn't include her despite 15 years, Billy wouldn't meet her eyes. "I've been reviewing the business structure," he began, his voice tight and rehearsed. "We need to make some changes. There's too much customer dependency on one person. It's creating an imbalance." Patricia's stomach dropped. She'd heard this tone before, from the technical school instructor who'd suggested she'd be happier in cosmetology, from the first shop owner who'd hired her then fired her after 2 weeks because his mechanics couldn't focus with a woman around. "An imbalance," she repeated slowly, understanding blooming like poison in her chest. "The team dynamic suffers when one person gets all the attention. Clients need to trust the shop, not just one mechanic." The words came faster now, defensive. "Your presence makes the other guys feel inadequate." "After 15 years, Patricia said, her voice diamond-hard despite the trembling starting in her core, "this is how you repay loyalty? Because I'm too good at my job? Because customers trust me? You're getting full severance. Everything legal." Billy finally looked at her, and she saw it there. Not regret, but resentment. Pure, undiluted resentment that she dared to be excellent in his family's shop. "Today's your last day." The words hung between them like a death sentence. Patricia stood without speaking, her dignity the only thing she had left to control. She walked out of that office into the sudden silence of the shop floor. Danny's wrench clattered to the concrete, his face a mask of horror. Frank turned away, shoulders slumped in shame. Marcus leaned against a toolbox, barely hiding his satisfaction. She moved to her station mechanically, gathering her personal tools. The torque wrench from her father, her diagnostic scanner, the socket set she'd bought with her first paycheck. Each item went into her canvas bag or metal toolbox with deliberate care, muscle memory taking over where her mind had gone numb. The walk to the bay door felt endless. Tool bag in her left hand, toolbox in her right, 15 years of proving herself reduced to what she could carry. Behind her, she felt their stares. Danny's devastation, Marcus's triumph, Billy's rigid justification. The door closed behind her with a metallic finality that echoed through Corktown like a gunshot. Wednesday morning arrived with cruel normalcy. The shop opened at 7, fluorescent lights flickering to life over empty bays. Billy sat in his office, forcing confidence he didn't feel, telling himself the customers would adjust. They always did. Mrs. Chen arrived at 8:15 for her scheduled transmission service, her Honda idling in the lot. She walked in scanning the shop floor, her face falling when she didn't see Patricia's familiar form. "Where's Miss Patricia?" she asked, keys clutched in her hand. "She's the only one who understands my car." Billy approached with his best business smile. "Mrs. Chen, Patricia no longer works here, but don't worry. Marcus has 15 years of experience. He'll take excellent care of your Honda." Mrs. Chen's expression shifted from confusion to something harder. "What do you mean she doesn't work here?" "Patricia's been servicing my car for 8 years. She looked at Marcus, then back to Billy. "No thank you, I'll find Patricia wherever she is." She walked out, just like that. 8 years of loyalty evaporating in seconds. Billy's smile cracked. "Mrs. Chen, wait," but she was already pulling out of the lot. At 9:30, Mr. Washington arrived with his pristine Mustang for its monthly checkup. The same question, the same shock, the same exit. "That woman restored my father's legacy," he said quietly. "You think I'd trust it to anyone else?" By noon, 6 more customers had come and gone, each one asking for Patricia. Each one leaving when they learned the truth. The phone rang constantly, not with new business, but with cancellations. The Rodriguez family terminated their family service contract on the spot. "Patricia treated us like family," Mrs. Rodriguez said coldly. "You treated her like she was disposable." Danny finally cornered Billy in the office, his usual easy demeanor replaced with barely controlled anger. "Boss, this is wrong. She was the heart of this place. People didn't come here for Jerry's auto service. They came for her." "They'll come back," Billy snapped, his face flushed. "They need their cars fixed. Where else are they gonna go? They'll realize they're being ridiculous and come back." But even as he said it, he could see the empty bays through his office window. Silent. Accusing. Already beginning to look like a tomb. Patricia found the space on Thursday, a single-bay garage in an old industrial building near the waterfront, bare concrete floors and exposed beams, but it had good light and working lifts. The rent was half what she'd expected. The landlord, an older Polish woman named Mrs. Kowalski, had heard what happened. "My husband was a mechanic," she said, handing Patricia the keys. "He would have been ashamed of what that man did to you." By Friday afternoon, Patricia had moved in her tools and hung a hand-painted sign, "Louise Automotive, honest work, fair prices." No fancy equipment yet, just her skills and her reputation. Mrs. Chen was her first customer, arriving Monday morning with a casserole and her Honda. "I asked around," she said simply. "Everyone knows where you are now." Across town, Jerry's auto service felt cavernous. The second week brought 3 total customers, all walk-ins who left when they learned Patricia was gone. Billy's spreadsheet showed numbers that made his hands shake. Revenue down 68% in 10 days. Frank entered the office Tuesday afternoon, his weathered face set in hard lines. "I'm done, Billy. 30 years I've been here, worked for your grandfather and your father. But I won't work for someone who treats people like that. Patricia earned every bit of respect she got, and you threw it away because your ego couldn't handle it." He left his coveralls folded on the desk. Danny stayed, though guilt ate at him. But there was nothing to do. Marcus attempted a valve timing job that spiraled into disaster, the customer eventually towing the vehicle away, threatening a lawsuit. At Rosie's Diner on Michigan Avenue, the story spread like wildfire over coffee and eggs. Billy Jerry fired Patricia Louise, the waitress told a table of regulars. 15 years of loyalty, and he fired her because she was too good. "Because she made him look small," someone corrected. "Where is she now?" "Opened her own place down by the waterfront. Already has a waiting list." The neighborhood had rendered its verdict. Jerry's auto service had committed an unforgivable sin, and Corktown remembered betrayal. By week 3, Billy couldn't make payroll. The bank statement mocked him with numbers that had once been healthy, now hemorrhaging toward zero. He sat at the dinner table pushing food around his plate while Sarah watched him with eyes that had moved past sympathy into something colder. "Your grandfather would be ashamed," she said finally, her voice quiet and cutting. "He built something that mattered to this community, and you let pride and prejudice destroy it in 3 weeks. She was just an employee." Billy exploded, his fork clattering against the plate. "A woman who didn't know her place, who made the other guys look, who—" "Listen to yourself," Sarah interrupted, her tone ice. "You sound like a man from 1950, not 2024. You fired the most talented person in your shop because she threatened your ego, because she was better than you and happened to be a woman." The silence that followed felt like a physical weight. That night, Billy stood alone in the shop at midnight, surrounded by silent bays and stacks of unpaid invoices. The parts suppliers had cut off credit. The insurance premium was overdue. The building that had housed 3 generations of Jerry men now felt like a mausoleum to his catastrophic arrogance. His eyes found the old photograph on the wall. His grandfather in 1962, arm around a young black mechanic when that alone was controversial. Below it, a faded quote in his grandfather's handwriting: "Skill is skill. Doesn't matter who has it or where it comes from." The truth crashed over him like Detroit winter. He'd destroyed everything because he couldn't handle being outshined by a woman. Not just any woman, the best mechanic who'd ever worked in this shop. Better than his father. Better than his grandfather. Better than him. Wednesday morning, Danny appeared in the doorway, duffel bag over his shoulder. "I'm leaving too, boss. I can't stay at a place that betrayed the best mechanic I've ever worked with. Patricia taught me half of what I know, and you threw her away like garbage." The door closed. Billy stood in the empty shop, finally, completely alone with what he'd done. Sarah found him Thursday morning staring at bankruptcy papers, his face hollow. She sat across from him with coffee neither would drink. "If you want to save anything, the business, our marriage, your soul, you swallow your pride and make this right," she said. "Go to her. Beg if you have to, but stop letting your grandfather's legacy die because you're too stubborn to admit you were wrong." Billy drove to the industrial district with hands gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. Patricia's modest shop sat between a metalworking facility and a closed restaurant, her hand-painted sign already weathered by Detroit wind. Through the grimy window, he could see her. Confident, focused, wholly in her element. Mrs. Chen sat in a folding chair reading a magazine, content to wait. Mr. Washington's Mustang gleamed in the bay. Billy sat in his truck for 20 minutes, rehearsing words that felt inadequate. Every version sounded hollow. Finally, he forced himself out. The shop door creaked. Patricia glanced up from under a Civic's hood, her expression unreadable. She didn't stop working, didn't acknowledge him beyond that single look. "Patricia, I need to talk to you." "I'm working," she replied, her voice perfectly controlled. "I have paying customers who respect me." The words hit like hammers. Billy deserved every syllable. "You were right." The confession came out raw, stripped of pretense. "I fired you because my ego couldn't handle that you were better than every man in my shop. Better than me. I destroyed 3 generations of legacy because I couldn't stand that a woman made me look small." Patricia straightened, wiping her hands slowly. "Waiting. I'm offering you 50-50 partnership, equal ownership, your name on the sign, full control of technical operations." His voice cracked. "Jerry and Louise Auto Service." She studied him for a long moment, her dark eyes measuring every tremor in his voice, every crack in his facade. "Why would I trust you?" she asked quietly. "After 15 years of subtle disrespect? After you threw me away like I was nothing?" Billy had no answer that could possibly be enough. Patricia sat in her sister Maria's kitchen that evening, nursing coffee that had gone cold. Maria, a union organizer who'd fought her own battles in male-dominated warehouses, listened to Billy's offer with skepticism etched deep in her expression. "He destroyed you," Maria said finally. "Threw away 15 years like it meant nothing. Why would you go back?" Patricia stared into her cup, seeing reflections of every slight, every dismissal, every time she'd had to prove herself twice as hard for half the recognition. But she also saw something else. Possibility. "Maybe I don't go back to his shop," she said slowly. "Maybe I go back to rebuild it the right way, where skill matters, not what's between your legs. Where the next woman who walks through that door doesn't have to fight like I did." Maria's expression softened. "Then make him pay for it, not in money, in change." Patricia called Billy Friday morning. His voice was hoarse when he answered, like he hadn't slept. "I have conditions," she said without preamble. "Anything. You name it. First, 50-50 legal partnership, lawyer-drafted ironclad. Second, my name goes on the business, Jerry and Louise Auto Service in equal lettering. Third, I have final authority on all technical decisions, hiring, and shop operations. Fourth, we commit to actively hiring and mentoring women mechanics. And fifth," she paused, letting the weight settle, "you make a public apology to the community acknowledging what you did was gender discrimination. Not mistakes were made. Real accountability." The silence stretched. Patricia could hear Billy's breathing, could almost feel him swallowing his pride in real time. "Done," he said finally. "All of it. When can we start the paperwork?" "I'll give you one chance, Billy," Patricia said, her voice hard as forged steel. "Just one. You waste it, I walk away and watch your grandfather's legacy die. And this time, I won't feel guilty about it." "I understand," he whispered. "Thank you." She hung up, her hand trembling slightly. Not from fear, from the weight of what she was about to attempt. The new sign went up on a crisp Monday morning in October, bold letters proclaiming Jerry and Louise Auto Service, partners since 2024. Patricia stood on the sidewalk watching workers secure it, feeling the weight of history shifting beneath her feet. Beside her, Billy looked smaller somehow, humbled in a way that might actually stick. By noon, a crowd had gathered, not just customers, but neighbors, curious onlookers, and people who'd heard the story ripple through Corktown. Billy stepped forward, his prepared statement crumpled in his shaking hand. "I made a terrible mistake based on prejudice," he began, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "I let my ego and my biases blind me to the truth, that Patricia Louise is not just the best mechanic this shop has ever had, but one of the finest in Detroit. She's not just returning, she's my equal partner, and this business will reflect that from this day forward." The applause was scattered, cautious. Forgiveness would be earned, not given. Mrs. Chen was first through the door, her Honda keys already out. "About time you came to your senses, Billy," she said, then turned to Patricia with a warm smile. "Welcome home, Miss Patricia." Mr. Washington arrived an hour later, his Mustang purring. "Miss Patricia, good to have you back where you belong, at the top." He pointedly ignored Billy's outstretched hand. Their first partner meeting happened that afternoon, tension thick enough to cut. They sat across from each other at the same scarred desk where Billy had fired her, now reorganizing the power structure entirely. "Technical decisions go through you," Billy said, reading from notes. "Hiring decisions we discuss together, but you have final say on mechanics." Patricia nodded, testing this new dynamic like someone checking ice before stepping onto a frozen lake. Within a week, they'd hired Maya Torres, a 19-year-old who'd been rejected by 4 other shops. "You'll work twice as hard and get half the credit," Patricia told her honestly, "but I'll teach you everything I know." Danny returned Wednesday, grinning. "I'm back because she's back." By month's end, the bays were full again. Revenue climbed, trust rebuilt itself slowly, one honest repair at a time. 6 months later, Billy spread the quarterly reports across the desk with something like wonder. Best numbers in the shop's 60-year history. The bays hummed with purposeful energy. 3 women mechanics now worked alongside Danny and 2 new hires, while Maya had progressed from oil changes to assisting on major repairs. Billy found himself at a community meeting in March, speaking to a room full of trade business owners about confronting bias. "I nearly destroyed my family's legacy because I couldn't see past my prejudices," he told them. "Don't wait until you lose everything to learn that lesson." The Detroit Free Press ran a feature in April, "Master Mechanic Breaking Barriers." Patricia's photo showed her mid-diagnosis, focused and confident, with Maya watching intently beside her. The article had sparked something, applications from women across Michigan wanting to learn the trade. A young woman appeared one Friday afternoon, maybe 17, clutching the newspaper article. "Is it true a woman owns this shop?" she asked Patricia. "I want to be a mechanic, but my guidance counselor said I should think about nursing instead." Patricia handed her an application. "Come back Monday. We'll show you what's possible." Friday afternoons had become sacred. Billy and Patricia reviewing the week over coffee, planning ahead, a genuine partnership built on hard-won respect. Their relationship had evolved into something neither expected: friendship. "I had a dream about my grandfather last week," Billy confessed. "He said, 'Took you long enough, boy.'" Patricia smiled, watching Maya carefully torque cylinder head bolts in the bay. "We're not just fixing cars anymore. We're fixing an industry, one shop at a time." The camera pulls back through the open bay doors, Patricia guiding Maya's hands, Danny laughing with Mrs. Chen, the new sign gleaming in Detroit afternoon light. The shop bustled with purpose, transformed not just by reconciliation, but by revolution. Because excellence has no gender. It only has those brave enough to demand it be recognized. If this story moved you, subscribe for more tales of courage, redemption, and people who refuse to be diminished. Check out our other videos about everyday heroes changing their worlds, one brave choice at a time. Thank you for watching.